Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the YouTube channel grecochess, where we discuss the various aspects of the game of chess. Now that I've presented the games that I have played in various tournaments and I have one day free until the next Sunday tournament, I decided to try my luck with the chessboards. If you remember some time ago, I started from the easiest, the lowest rated chessboard Martin until I would lose. And finally, I lost with Emir when I played the black pieces. I won with the white pieces, lost the black pieces, then tried my revenge a second time, lost again. But just now I tried for a third time. Me with the white pieces, Emir from Turkey rated 1200 with the black pieces. How did it go? Let's see. Would third time be the charm or maybe a third loss in a row? And let me share this game with you and we'll see how the game unfolded. And here we are. In order not to spoil the result and the surprise, I'm going only to show part of the screen, the relevant part of the screen that shows the chessboard of chess.com. And here you're going to see on the left part of the screen, you're going to see what does the computer think about the moves. Of course, during the game, I had no access to this board, so I had no idea who was ahead and by how much and what would have been the best move. But here you're going to see it. If white, meaning Emir, bot with 1200 is better, you'll see a number here at the top left. If myself and the Harry from Greece is better, at the bottom left, you'll see the number. And let the game begin. I'm going to click and the moves will show on the board one after the other. And once this is over, we are going to do the game review. And Emir, and I'm going to read the comments as they go here. D4 is a book move, a fine first move by your opponent, says the coach. Of course, it is artificially intelligence that makes a and then you reply symmetrical, another book move. You see the little booklet here, this means book move. Pawns meet in the center and you've given yourself many options to consider. Pawn to c4 for Emir. The Queen's Gambit is an excellent choice for beginners and experienced players alike. And my second move, pawn to c6. That pawn chain will help strengthen your pawn structure. This is called, by the way, the Slav defense. I prefer this to the e6 so it doesn't block the bishop on c8, although sooner or later I may have to play e6. Knight to f3 for Emir, and f3 controls the e5 square and protects the d4 pawn. Knight f6 for me. You're bringing your knight into play, eyeing the central square, says the coach. Knight to c3 is a book move again. Until now, all book moves. Attacks the d5 square and starts to fight for the e4 square. And the fifth move for me, the pawn takes on c4 is a book move. You captured a free pawn. So we completed the first, not yet, the four moves. After the fifth move, we're going to see what happened. Pawn to a4 for Emir. a4 stops the b7, b5 advance, which would have allowed black to keep the c4 pawn. And now this is my fifth move. Bishop goes to g4. Bishop g4 is a book move. You follow the great opening principle and developed a new piece. So we completed the first five moves, all of them book moves, and I have a no, Emir has an advantage of 0.7 after the first five moves. Everything book, meaning everything follows opening theory. Let's continue. Knight to e5 for Emir. This is the last book move. Knight to e5 attacks the bishop and the c4 pawn while occupying the center, meaning Emir can gain the c4 pawn. Myself, I was a little bit worried. Yes, the bishop was defended by the knight on f6 if Emir's knight would take my bishop, but I was worried. First of all, usually a bishop is more valuable than a knight, but also what if Emir was somehow was able to force my knight on f6 to move? Inaccuracy says the comment, it is better to avoid moving the same piece in the opening. Yes, but better moving it twice and losing it, I was thinking. Pawn to e4. Mistake. The game is now close to equal as your opponent's small edge has disappeared, says the comment. Because bishop to g6. Yes, I miscalculated because the pawn on e4 was attacked twice and defended only once. It's a miss, yes. Your best move was to capture a pawn that was threatening to win material. You allowed the opponent to force doubling of pawns. Yes, this was a mistake because I miscalculated. I didn't realize it was attacked twice and defended only once. Queen to e2. Another miss, says the computer. You're the coach, computer coach. You can pick up a free pawn. You got lucky here. Your opponent missed a chance to capitalize on your mistake. Mistake again. Pawn to e6. This move will cost you a pawn. Yes, I should have taken the pawn on d4. It was free for my queen. Bishop to g5. Another inaccuracy, they missed a chance to tactically winning a pawn. You see, both Emir and me are not playing well. Let's see a comedy of errors. I'm going to put my bishop on e7 to unpin my knight. The coach says your best move was to prevent castling. This I will do it by winning the pawn. Queen to e3, inaccuracy, moving the same piece twice in the opening isn't a good strategy. You see the question mark with exclamation here in the orange circle means inaccuracy. Finally, I played the best move. Knight from b8 to d7, you're threatening to win material through a discovered attack. Long side or queen side castling for Emir, they missed a chance to tactically win a pawn by taking my knight on f6, I believe, because what was happened? This would start a series that would win a pawn. I'm not sure which one. And I'm taking the knight on e5. Finally, second best move in a row. You're forcing your opponent to double pawns. We take the pawn on e5, a clear recapture, the best. And that time I was a little bit concerned because there was a double attack on my side. Both my knight on f6 was attacked by the pawn on e5 and my queen on d8 by the rook on d1. How could I escape both dangers? Finally, I found a way. Great move, says the computer. My knight goes to d7. Nice find. You found the only move in this position. You found the move that blocks the attacker. Good. I felt relief when I saw that. Rook goes to d6. Blunder, double question mark. You are now able to capture a bishop and win material after the follow-up trades. And once again, I miscalculated because the bishop on c5 was attacked twice and defended only once. Instead, kingside castling, a miss. Of course, I missed a chance to get a bishop. Bishop goes now back to f4. Blunder, second blunder in a row for Emir. They left the rook open for capture, giving you a chance to win material. And yes, finally, I have another best move. I capture the rook. Yes, the pawn will take it back, but now I have an exchange. I have extra material. Plus the pawn before that I was finally able to keep. Queen to b6. Oops, you give up a pawn. Maybe, but I feel that I'm attacking now. We finished 15 moves, and I have advantage, as you see, of 2.2. Even though I could have had a better advantage of 3 if I had played correctly. I was thinking of this move, the pawn goes to e5, but I was feeling that by doing so, I would weaken the d5 square. Of course, still this protected by the 6-6 pawn, but queen goes to d2. Decent move, but they had a better one, meaning the bishop takes the pawn on c4. Rook goes to d8. Excellent. Your rook is now developed, bringing all pieces to the board. Bishop goes to e3 and attacks my queen, but computer says inaccuracy. You're not able to eventually win material. Let's see how. Queen goes to a5. Good choice to move your threatened queen. But computer would rather have my knight jump to c5, but I was afraid by doing so, I would have my knight pinned. Knight goes back to d1 inaccuracy. The knight becomes less active in the square. And now, since I'm ahead, I'm exchanging queens. It makes sense to simplify with trades. And of course, the king taking back is the expected move. I'm going to finally win the pawn on e4 that I had so many chances before. The computer wants the bishop to take the pawn on a7, but then I can push my pawn on b6, as you see, and then the bishop is blocked. So that's perhaps why Emir did not play it. Instead, they attacked my knight on e4, which I sent back to g6. Excellent. This is a good time for you to get out of trouble. 20 moves we completed, and my advantage now becomes 4.0. Now, really, things started going better for me. It seems that Emir had memorized a few opening moves, was playing well then, but after that, little by little, was making mistakes and going down. Finally, the bishop took the pawn on a7. They made one of the top moves in this position. I'm taking now, I'm not taking, I'm threatening, I'm taking nothing, but I'm threatening the pawn on e6 after my knight moved to f6. And knight to f6 is excellent. They say thumbs up, that's what it means. A knight in the center controls more squares, yes, but most of all, I want to win the pawn on d6. Because this pawn might promote if I'm not careful. Currently, there is a rook behind it, but you better capture it, not just control it. Knight goes to e3. Yes, the knight is on more active square, says the coach, but I'm going to win the pawn finally. Yes, this is the way, says the coach. Because that was one of the main weapons of the opponent. Yes, of course, the pawn under best play could not promote, but if I did not play my best, perhaps it could. King to c3. They move the king out of check from your rook. Another check. My knight goes to d5. Of course, the opponent can exchange it, but I want exchanges. I am ahead in material. I want exchanges. And that's why, even though that's what the computer says, Emir did not exchange the knights. But I'm going to exchange him now by my own, with the check, discovered check. Simultaneously, of course, Emir takes back the knight. We're reaching the end where my extra material, meaning an exchange and two more pawns, will show the difference. I want now to make even more exchanges. That's why I'm sending my bishop to d3. But Emir is going to delay me. Bishop to c5. I cannot take the bishop on f1 because then I lose my rook. In fact, Emir does something very clever. He is attacking both of my rooks on the same diagonal. So I'm going to lose one of them, meaning I'm going ahead until now exchange and two extra pawns. I'm going to lose the exchange and only stay with two extra pawns. Still better position, but not so good as I was hoping. I save my one rook, and the other is lost. Pawn to f4 for Emir, and now I'm exchanging the bishops. And I'm threatening the pawn on a4. I want to win as many pawns as possible. We're going to a rook ending. The rook endings usually are not so easy to be won. They draw it most of the times, so I need to have as many extra pawns as possible. And of course, if I can exchange rooks, if this can lead me to a winning ending, yes. Rook to e1. Good, not a mistake, but they did not find the best move here. The best move, of course, is rook goes to a1 and protects the pawn. So I'm grabbing the pawn on a4. You want a pawn for free, says the coach. Pawn to b3 attacks my rook, but easily taken by my pawn on c4. Although I don't have yet exchange, we're still king and rook every side. I have so many more pawns. I have 7 pawns versus 3 for Emir. Rook goes to f1, and now it is a race to advance the pawn. First of all, let's put the rook behind it. Rook to b4. If Emir does not react, the pawn will promote in 2 moves. But how will he react? First of all, the rook to a1, excellent. There is no back rank. Don't have to worry about it. But it's a king that needs to go. In fact, the king and the rook need to coordinate to capture the pawn on b3. But even if they capture it, the remaining pawns should be able to help me win. I felt threatened by a back rank, and I moved the pawn to g6. I'm not sure how necessary it was, because if Emir checked me on a8, my king could go to e7. But the computer thinks it's the best. You see the star. The star means best move. And Emir finds a chance to send his king to d3, be near my pawn, but my pawn moves to b2. So Emir must spend the move saving his rook, which he does. Rook goes to b1. We move the rook to safety. And now my pawn is one square for promotion, but this square is covered by the rook on b1, and the king at d3 is coming near. How will I play? I want to push other pawns. I cannot rely on the b2 pawn, so I'm pushing the c pawn, goes to c5. King goes to c2 and is ready to win my pawn. My pawn continues going up to c4. If it can make it to c3, it protects the b2 pawn, and if somehow can find a way to protect this pawn as well, I'm doing great. Pawn goes to 5. Decent move, but they had the better one. I'm taking back the pawn. King goes to c3, attacks my rook. I need to be careful because I'm going to lose something, definitely. If I save my rook, I'm going to lose at least one of the two pawns on b2 and c4. Rook goes, of course, back to b6. I save my rook. And Emir is going to take my pawn on b2. Coach says R taking on b2 is excellent. I like that choice. I'm going to exchange rooks now because I'm going to an ending, winning ending. Only pawns remain, but I have 6 and Emir has 2. Out of my 6, 3 are passed pawns. The b7, the c4, and the e6. While Emir has no passed pawns. He has the 2 pawns g2 and h2, which are balanced by pawns on f7, f5, and h7. But now will I be able to promote them? King goes to e7, bringing the king near the action. This activates your king in the end game, says the coach. King to c3, and my pawn on c4 is going to get lost. But my king makes it to e6, excuse me, to d6, and yes, the pawn is lost. They took your pawn for free, but still I have an advantage 5 versus 2, with 2 out of my 5 pawns being passed pawns. And I'm pushing one of the passed pawns, going to e5. King goes to b5, ready to perhaps to capture the b7 pawn. Now, the theory says that one must throw a square from the king. That should be this square that I'm drawing here, and any pawns in this square can be captured by the king before promotion. But here is the strategy. I'm going to push the e pawn as far as possible until it's captured. In the meantime, I'm going to use the time to also push the b pawn while the king captures the e pawn. So my pawn goes to e4. King decides not to take it and goes to b6, ready to grab it. b7. Playable, says the computer, is not playable at all. But either way, rather was winning. Now the e pawn is going to promote no matter what. The king can get as many pawns as it likes. My pawn goes to e3. Pawn to h3. They played one of the best moves here. Doubt how many best moves are there. Supposedly the best move would be the computer to go to b5, but still the e pawn promotes. E pawn to e2. You're threatening to force eventual checkmate. 45 moves, and you see my advantage is 8.1. It's very important, very significant. King will take the b7 pawn. As I say, if you're going to die, die with your stomach full. And my pawn promotes. Queen to e1. You have a clear path to a force checkmate. Just find the right moves. You see the m3. It means that if I play correctly, in 3 moves it's made. Pawn to g4. I exchange pawns. Still m3. I wasted 1 move toward checkmate. Queen goes to c3, restricting the enemy king, still on the way to checkmate. King goes to a7. My queen goes to b4, 2 moves for checkmate. So the black, he doesn't have too many legal moves. There's only 3 options. Either the pawn from g4 goes to g5, and keeping this pawn alive makes it much more difficult for any stalemate ideas. Or the king goes either to a6 or a8. Let's see what Emir is going to do. Moves the pawn. My king goes to c7. It's the best, getting closer to the forced checkmate. And when you see, my next move should be made. King goes to the corner to a8, and queen to b7 checkmate. And believe it or not, third time was a charm. On my third attempt, I was able to defeat with black pieces the bot Emir from Turkey with a rating of 1200. But let's look now at the other screen with the game review. What does the computer think about my move? Let me share the screen. Why can't I share the screen? I have to go here, here, and here. And here we see what does the computer think about the game that I just played. You see here, had I shown the entire screen before, you would have seen at least this diagram, and it would have spoiled the surprise. To keep the suspense, to keep the, I wouldn't call it agony, the excitement, and to the curiosity, I decided that's why to share only part of the screen. What does he think? He thinks that Emir played with accuracy 76.4, I played 83.4, and Emir played as if his rating was 900, less than his 1200. The last time I played with him, he played as if his rating was 2100. How can I defeat him? My rating 1900, higher than my actual one. The 1824 you see here is my rapid rating. How did we do? I had one great move, best 22 for me, 18 for Emir, excellent 14 for me, 8 for Emir, good 9 for Emir, 3 for me, book 6 for Emir, 5 for me. Inaccuracy 6 for Emir, 3 for me, one mistake each of us, misses 1 for Emir, 2 for me, and 2 blunders for Emir. That decided the game. And that concludes the game with Emir. And in a future video, I will try to see if what can I do against the next one. The next one is Elena from Romania. Salute, can you play better than my student? But as I mentioned, I have in front of me the Chessanity tournament, so hopefully the next 3 videos are going to be my games in the Chessanity chess tournament. But after that, I might resume the bots playing as a bot, see how high I can go. On my first run, I said I'm going to stop when I lose. I lost with black against Emir. I had defeated very easily Emir the white. Once later, I tried my revenge. The second time against Emir, I lost again. But now third time was the charm. I finally defeated Emir. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're enjoying these bots. You can play also yourselves against the bots to see how far you can go. And if you want to share your games with me, it will be my pleasure. Or any other games you have played. I'm Harry Lasaniziris. This is my channel Greco Chess. Thanks to the viewers, thanks to the subscribers, thanks to the likes and the encouraging comments. For now, goodbye.